What's up, YouTube? So, I want to come through and talk about something that I realized that I haven't really spoken about before, right? Which is strange because, you know, I've discussed a variety of colorism topics on this channel. So many different colorism videos on this channel. But I realized I have never quite discussed colorism within black families. I noticed that. And this came up very recently because a video that I posted on my channel has been receiving a lot of traffic. And the video is a colorism video, of course, and it's about a light-skinned mom and a dark-skinned daughter, and the light-skinned mom treating the dark-skinned daughter, negatively during childhood. And people on the video, I looked at the stats and it was primarily women watching the video. It probably a little over 80% women watching the video. So I'm assuming the majority of the comments came from women, which they did, but a few comments came from men too. But people were talking about their colorism experiences within their families. And I also have another video where that happened too. A video titled like why I talk about colorism, and people talked about their colorism experiences within their families, and also at school too, and just in general too, but especially in their families. And for me, that's such a foreign concept. And I think that played a factor in why I never specifically did a video about colorism within families, was because it was such a foreign concept. I really didn't think that colorism was so pervasive in black families, honestly. Um, and I feel kind of bad and dumb and guilty for even thinking that, considering how much I talk about colorism, of course. But it's just such a foreign concept to me. I just kind of assumed that colorism wasn't really a big deal or a big issue when it came to black families, oddly enough. And I guess I was just approaching colorism from my own personal perspective because, like, for me, I come from a family that is, when it comes to skin tone, very blended, right? Like, my parents both had different skin tones. I had different skin tones than my parents. I had different skin tone than my brother and my sister, um, as well. There's different skin tones throughout my family. Um, I'm more familiar with the people on my father's side of the family than my mother's side of the family. But nevertheless, there's a variety of different skin tones, right? And thankfully, when I visited my father's family, I didn't really, I don't really have a strong relationship with my mother's side of the family. But when I visited my father's side of the family, thankfully, like, colorism and skin tone differences and that sort of a thing, never came up. And it's, just thinking about it, thinking back on my interaction with my family, it never really came up in my family, you know. Honestly, I didn't really see I didn't really notice a difference until like I went to school, and that difference was pointed out to me like in middle school. Whereas like, that was for me, like in my personal experience, when the questions about race started to come up, right? Where people would be like, what are you? Right? Like, are you mixed? Those sort of questions started to come up during middle school primarily. And to be fair, during elementary school, it wasn't those questions, but it was more like, what do your parents look like? So I think it was like a hint of that, but I guess people didn't really have a concept or know how to phrase it during elementary school, right? So it's like, my dad's light, my mom is brown or dark, that sort of a thing, right? Um, and as far as like middle school, I can't really think of many like overtly negative experiences that I had because of skin tone. The negative experiences in skin tone kind of started in high school, but thankfully they weren't very frequent, right? They were not the mode of my high school experience, thankfully. But on occasions, people did negatively refer to my skin tone on a couple occasions. Some sort of a, shady type of situations here and there. But also just in general kind of refer to it. Because, like, elementary school, middle school, and high school, I went to majority black schools. Okay. And in the neighborhoods that I went to, the black people were brown skin and dark skin, right? So, like, while I was a part of the majority, in a weird way, I was like a minority too. Too. It's a weird situation there. You're kind of like the majority, but the minority at the same time, right? Um, but I think I'm getting a bit off subject here because I want to stick on family, right? But I kind of wanted to throw that in there too, though. Um, and I meant to give this disclaimer a little earlier, but I guess I can give it now. Disclaimer, you know, I'm not the best person to discuss this topic, colorism in black families, because I don't really have any experience with this, thankfully, you know. But unfortunately, from what I hear from other people, that doesn't seem to be as common. I think what's more common is probably colorism experiences within family or within black families, seemingly are more common. And I kind of thought that colorism, coming from my personal experience, I didn't really think colorism was a big deal when it came to families. I kind of thought it was a big deal when it came to outside the house. But, yeah, again, it's just a really foreign concept. Why would people perpetuate colorism to their own kids? You know? And I can definitely imagine that being terrible because I really hate to hear colorism stories that come from people's family members, right? Where people's family members made distinctions with kids based on skin tone and how they treated kids. That is, really ugly to do something like that. And even talking about this, I kind of low key feel like a little weird, a little guilty, a little like, you know, I should just not be speaking about this or taking up any sort of a space in this sort of a situation. Um, but I will say, you know, because of being able to, have experience, a familial experience that didn't involve colorism, I will say that I have even more of a duty and more of an obligation to continue the colorism conversations, to perpetuate the colorism conversations, you know? Um, you know, and back to my family. You know, my family situation. I think my father and his brothers, they grew up in a majority black neighborhood, I believe. They were definitely, the quote unquote light skinned family on the block, right? And I will say that the people who they interact with and the people that I've met over the years that they were, friends of the family and all that good stuff, they were black people, black from a distance, um, people, right? As well. Um, so 3 out of 4, like, so my father and 2 of his brothers, married black women, black from a distance women, um, except for one who did not. um, and as well, my grandfather, he his situation is a little interesting because he is the oldest of his siblings, but he is also the lightest of his siblings. Usually, the lightest sibling tends to be the youngest sibling, and the oldest sibling tends to be the darkest sibling. But in my grandfather's situation, my paternal grandfather's situation, it did not play out like that for some reason. His dad, I believe, was like brown skin, dark skin, and his mom was white passing. And his brother and sisters are like brown skin, dark skin. His younger brothers and sisters are brown skin and dark skin, and there's a bit of an age gap between them too. Um, and as far as my grandmother is concerned, I think she came from a pretty much a multi-generational mixed background where I think both parents were multi-generational mixed. And my grandmother pretty much is white passing, and as is my father is white passing as well. Um, um, and I'll say that I never really felt any sort of a like negative vibe from like my grandmother, as far as like from any family member as far as skin tone is concerned. Yeah. And I'll say that my mother, like when my mother and father divorced, she pretty much cut ties with the whole family, pretty much except my grandmother. And she did like on occasions, kind of like keep in contact with her. So I think that says something too. And as well, my dad's girlfriend has sort of did something, uh, had a sort of similar relationship with my grandmother as well. Mm. But to bring it back to the topic at hand, well, I don't think I was off topic, but to bring it back home here, um, yeah, I don't know, like, why do we do this to each other as black people? Why do we want to perpetuate colorism? Why do we want to cling on to colorism for some? I don't know. You know, considering that we have so much to deal with when it comes to the system of white supremacy, it's like, why would we want to add another layer of difficulty onto that? And then some people are like, well, we can't help it. White supremacy is where colorism came from. And, of course, that's true. Of course, we all know about, the system, slavery and like, people in the house versus people in the field, that sort of a thing, making differentiations like that as far as like, oh, who's considered like the better of the inferior people, quote unquote, right? Um, that sort of a thing. But it's like, why do we want to hurt each other? Why do we want to make people feel bad because of their skin tone? You know, why do we do these sort of things. Why can't we just be honest? Why can't we just and say how we truly feel and just be forthcoming with it? Why do we feel the need to hide, to be covert? Right then and there, we know you're doing something wrong, right? Why do we want to hurt people? You know, why can't we just not engage in it? You know, why can't we just put it off to the side and throw it away and just get rid of it? Why do we hold on to it? Why do we cling on to it? You know, I don't know. But it's terrible that this is still going on, and terrible that this is especially going on in people's families. Because it's one thing when it's outside of the family, but it's a different thing when it's coming from like your family, and it's harder to get away from it when it's your family, especially when you're young too. And I don't know, I wouldn't really know how to help anyone in a situation like that. If a kid was in a situation like that, I wouldn't really know how to help, you know. But I wanted to do this video to sort of just, again, perpetuate and continue the conversation, right? And to touch on a different aspect of colorism that I haven't touched on much before. You know, I've talked about it perhaps in passing, but it wasn't something that I've ever gone in depth in and did a video about, though. So yeah, here you have it. So thanks a lot for watching this video. Please feel free to comment. Your comments and contributions and feedback are greatly appreciated, and greatly valued. Until the next video, adios and goodbye for now.